On July 30th, 1930, 68,000 people packed into a stadium in Montevideo, Uruguay, to watch two teams fight for a trophy that didn't exist a decade earlier. There was no television. Most of the world didn't even know the game was happening. And yet what started that day would one day be watched by half the planet at once. But to understand how we got there, to that first final, we have to go back, not just years, centuries, because before there was a World Cup, there wasn't even a rule book. People have kicked things for fun for thousands of years. The Romans had a game called harpastum, a rough contact sport played with a small ball. In medieval England, entire villages played a chaotic version called folk football, sometimes hundreds of players on each side, using a pig's bladder as a ball, with almost no rules at all. Goals could be miles apart. Games could last all day. It wasn't uncommon for someone to get seriously hurt. It was less a sport and more a controlled riot. Some kings even tried to ban it. It was seen as too violent, too disorderly, a distraction from archery practice that England needed for its armies. By the 1800s, football had found a new home. England's private schools, Eton, Harrow, Rugby, Westminster. Each one played its own version of the game, with its own rules. Some allowed carrying the ball, some didn't. Some allowed hacking, kicking an opponent's shins as a legitimate tactic. When students from these different schools went off to university, they ran into a problem. Nobody could agree on how to play. At Cambridge University, students got so tired of arguing before every match that they decided to fix it permanently. In 1848, a group of students at Cambridge met to hammer out a single, unified set of rules that anyone from any school could play by. They revised them again in 1863 and posted the final version on trees around Parker's Piece, a large public green in the middle of the city. These Cambridge rules banned carrying the ball and limited rough contact. No hacking, no tripping, no holding. It was a small, quiet moment. Just some university students pinning paper to trees, but it would shape a sport played by billions. That same year, in October 1863, representatives from London area football clubs met at the Freemasons Tavern in London to form an official governing body, the Football Association. They leaned heavily on the Cambridge rules to write their own laws of the game, laws that, for the first time, officially banned handling the ball. But not everyone agreed to give up carrying the ball. One club walked out of those meetings, unhappy that handling and hacking were being banned. That disagreement never really healed. Eventually, the clubs who wanted to keep carrying the ball broke away entirely, and in 1871 formed their own separate code, the Rugby Football Union. From that point on, football and rugby were officially two different sports, with two different futures. With its rules finally settled, football started to travel. British sailors played it in port cities. Engineers, teachers, and factory workers building railways and mills abroad brought it with them, from Argentina to Italy to Egypt. Local students and workers picked it up fast, partly because, unlike cricket or rugby, it needed almost no equipment, just a ball and some open space. The first official international match was played in 1872 between Scotland and England in Glasgow. It ended 0-0. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the first time two nations had ever lined up against each other under one shared set of rules. By 1886, the rules had spread so widely across Britain and Ireland that the four home football associations, England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, formed a body called the International Football Association Board to make sure everyone kept playing by the exact same laws. That board still writes the rules of football today. By the early 1900s, football was booming across continental Europe. But there was still no single organization connecting all these national associations together. So in 1904, in Paris, representatives from 7 countries, France, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland, founded FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. Ironically, England, the country that invented the modern rules, wasn't even in the room. For years, football at the highest level was mostly amateur, and the biggest international stage was the Olympic Games. But the Olympics only allowed amateur players, which meant many of the best footballers in the world, who were now being paid to play, couldn't take part at all. In 1926, FIFA's president, Jules Rimet, along with the French football official Henri Delaunay, proposed something bold. A brand new tournament, open to every player, amateur or professional, that any nation on earth could enter. After 2 years of debate and planning, FIFA announced it. Starting in 1930, this new competition, the World Cup, would be held every 4 years. FIFA picked Uruguay to host the very first tournament. It made sense at the time. Uruguay had just won Olympic football gold twice in a row, and 1930 marked 100 years since the country's first constitution. To celebrate, Uruguay even built a brand new stadium from scratch, the Estadio Centenario. Here's the catch. There was no qualifying tournament. FIFA simply invited all of its member nations to sign up. With a deadline of February 28, 1930. FIFA had 41 members at the time, but almost none of Europe wanted to go. Uruguay was weeks away by boat, and most European clubs refused to release their players for a trip that long. In the end, only 4 European teams made the journey: France, Belgium, Romania, and Yugoslavia. Some of them only agreed to go after Jules Rimet personally pushed them, and in Romania's case, after the King of Romania stepped in and hand-picked the squad himself. The French squad actually boarded the same ship as the referees and the Belgian team, and spent over 2 weeks crossing the Atlantic together, training on the ship's deck to stay in shape. Meanwhile, 8 nations from the Americas applied: Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, and the United States. Combined with the host, Uruguay, and the 4 Europeans, that made 13 teams in total, the smallest World Cup field there would ever be. On July 13, 1930, the very first World Cup match kicked off at the small Estadio Pocitos in Montevideo, France against Mexico. France won 4-1. It wasn't a huge crowd, and there were no fireworks or ceremonies, just 13 teams in 4 groups, playing for a trophy nobody had heard of yet. The tournament was split into 4 groups. The winner of each group would move straight to the semi-finals. No quarter-finals, no extra rounds. It was a simple, almost improvised format, because nobody had ever run a tournament like this before. Uruguay cruised through their group, beating Peru and then Romania 4-0, with 4 different players scoring. Argentina were just as dominant, topping their group before beating the United States 6-1 in the semi-final. Yugoslavia, the only European team to make it out of the group stage, fell to Uruguay 6-1 in the other semi-final. That set up the final anyone in South America wanted to see: Uruguay against Argentina. 2 neighboring countries, separated only by a river, about to play for the very first World Cup. 68,000 fans packed into the brand new Estadio Centenario. Tensions were so high beforehand that the 2 federations actually argued over which ball to use, so the referee, a Belgian named John Langenus, came up with a compromise. Argentina's ball would be used in the first half, Uruguay's in the second. Argentina led 2-1 at halftime. But in the second half, playing with their own ball, Uruguay stormed back, scoring 3 unanswered goals to win 4-2. Uruguay, the small host nation, was the first ever World Cup champion. Back in Montevideo, the celebrations were so wild that the following day was declared a national holiday. It's said the Uruguayan ambassador in Paris was even attacked by an angry mob after the result reached Europe, a sign of just how much national pride was already riding on this brand new competition. 13 teams, 18 matches, 69 goals. That's all it took to launch the tournament that would one day be watched by half of humanity. But this was only the beginning. Wars would cancel it twice. The number of teams would grow from 13 to 16 to 24 to 32, and soon 48. Rules would change again and again. And the story of how football grew from a handful of nations into the most watched event on Earth is only just getting started.